All right, I think we're live now. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. I know we've got a couple of people in here already. Got started just a minute or two late tonight, but I'm here, so that's what matters, I guess. Well, it matters to me anyway. I don't know if it matters to you guys. I'm sure it does. You wouldn't be here if it didn't. But anyway, while we're getting into this, let me just do the disclaimers I normally do. So again, this is a weekly live broadcast pretty much every Thursday night. Sometimes I'm not able to make it. Life gets in the way, work gets busy, whatever. But most of the time I'm here on Thursday evenings, 7 o'clock Central Time. I don't have a topic planned out. This is just an Ask Me Anything session. So you guys ask your questions, and I do my best to respond to them, all the comments that come in the live chat. Just a couple of rules here. Keep it family friendly. Don't start cussing at people. Don't be rude. Don't start being, calling people names. Any of those kinds of things. We'll boot you out if we have to. And don't just spam us with comments. If you want to ask a question, ask a question. Like I said, I worked my way down the live broadcast, the chat, and I try to get all the questions answered. But if I missed something for some reason, then there we go. Now we're working. Sorry, computer's running a little slow all of a sudden, just kind of locked up. There we go. If I miss your comment, though, and you see me answer a comment that came in after yours, go ahead and ask it again. That's fine. But don't just spam the comments. Don't just leave a ton of comments. So, all right, let's get into this. Rainier, I think your name is Rainier. If not, I've been pronouncing it wrong for a long time. Has got a question right off the bat. Says, hi, Chris. I just had my first litter of rabbits today, and I got a litter of 11, and 2 passed away already, and all other 9 are doing strong. Says it's a big litter, and hello to you, by the way, Boris. Says it's a big litter. Should I check on them a lot or no? Does she not have to eat the died ones or no? Her first litter was a litter of 2 and lost both. Should I be scared about this one? That's what the previous owner said. Thanks and love the vids. Okay, so first of all, a litter of 11 rabbits is an awful big litter. It's not uncommon to lose a couple from that litter. 9's not too bad. She should be able to take care of 9. I wouldn't stress too much about it. Check on them frequently, not too frequently, but check on them just to make sure they're okay. And I'm not sure what you mean by does she not have to eat the died ones? No, you don't need, no, get them out of there. If they died, get them out of there. Don't leave them in there. There's no reason to do that. But chances are she's going to do a good job of taking care of them. It's rare that a mother rabbit won't take care of them. You just probably won't see it happening. She very seldom will get in there with them when you're around, probably. That's not uncommon either. Don't stress about that. She should be fine. That would be my best advice for it, is I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just check on them fairly regularly. Make sure no more have passed away. If they have, remove them and clean up that mess. So, and I think that's about it. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Puts you a little bit more at ease. I'm sure they're going to do great. So congratulations on your big litter, by the way. 11. That's a huge litter, and losing 2, even 9, still a good size litter. All right, watermelon. Yeah, you're a little early. That's okay. We're all here. Caden says, should I let my quail eggs set for 24 hours after they get shipped? Yeah, that's probably the best bet. I let mine usually sit overnight. It's not quite 24 hours, 12 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours. Any of those are fine. But yeah, let them set for a little while. Let them acclimate to room temperature, kind of settle down from being shipped and jostled around a little bit. Again, you don't have to really set the clock and watch it that hard, but put them in. What I do is I set mine on the egg turner by the incubator and just let them set overnight, and then put them in the next morning. All right, where are we at here? Letrick says GE. I'm sure there's more to that. Okay, he says, hi, Chris. How can I tell if my doe is pregnant? Boy, that's a tough one. It's really, really tricky to tell if a doe is pregnant or not, for sure. If you bred her and you got successful fall-offs, I would just count on her being pregnant. And, sorry, my nose is itching again. I never did get company last week. You guys are in here, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah, very, very difficult to tell if a rabbit's pregnant or not. You can try palpating the rabbit, which is, you put your hand underneath them and you feel. That's usually by about day 10 or 11 of the pregnancy, you should be able to tell, but it's really, really tricky. So even if you don't feel anything, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's not pregnant. So again, if you had a successful fall-off, I would count on her being pregnant. One thing you can do when it gets really close to the due date, day 25 or so like that, take a handful of straw every day or so, go in and throw it in her cage, and if she picks it up, starts running around with it hanging out both sides of her mouth, and it'll be pretty obvious what I'm talking about, then you can almost bet she's pregnant. She's trying to build a nest. She's ready to build a nest. So that would be, those are about the only things you can do, unfortunately. It's just really tricky to tell. So hopefully that helps, and good luck. Hopefully she does have some babies. All right, Never End Creative says, what is going on here? Something's going on. There we go. Sorry, phone was acting up on me. Oh, look at that. I got a $5 super chat from Rainer. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's very generous of you. All right, Never End says, hey, I just took my quail outside today from the brooder. Had a downpour today. They're covered, but our quail fine if they get a little wet. Yeah, they should be fine if they get a little wet, depending on what age they are. You said you just took them out of the brooder, so they're probably just a couple of weeks old. If they're soaking wet, you might want to bring them in, dry them off a little bit. Excuse me, put them under, a little bit of a hair dryer, cool setting, not super hot setting. Just because you have to worry about them if they get wet, getting chilled. But if they're, old birds, they're completely feathered out, they're probably okay if they get a little bit wet. And even if they're younger birds and they get just a little damp, that's okay too. That's not going to hurt them really. All right, where we at here? J for Life says, how are you doing, Chris? I'm doing well, thank you. Charlie says, hello, Chris. Can quail get egg bound? If so, how to treat it? Thanks. Quail can get egg bound. It's pretty rare. As far as how to treat egg bound, boy, I'd have to look that up because I've never had that happen to me. You stumped me on that one. I'm trying to think what you do to treat egg bound birds. I can't remember that. Somebody in here is going to know because they've dealt with chickens or whatever, and they'll answer that here in a second. I'd have to look that up, honestly. I've never dealt with an egg bound quail, so it can happen, but it's pretty rare. It's not a usual thing, and chances are if your quail gets egg bound, the way you're going to find out is it died. So you're not going to even know about it to treat it. There we go. Bath soak is what I was told and did. Yeah, you're probably right. An Epsom salt bath soak. There you go. Thank you. That refreshed my memory. Yes, that's what you want to do. Soak them, not the whole bird, of course, just, the egg laying area. Soak that in a warm Epsom bath salt or Epsom salt bath. There we go. And that should help them with getting the egg to pass, hopefully. But again, if it happens, it's going to be tough to know for sure. And chances are your bird's probably going to die before you ever figure it out. I hate to be like that, but that's usually what happens. Anyway, hopefully that answers that question for you. All right, Michael says, hello, everybody. Hope you're all having a great night from Big Mike and the family Long Island. Thanks, Mike. Hope you are, too. And John, well, look at that. There's a $9.99 super chat from Robert. Says, oh, boy, I got to scroll down to read this one. I have learned so much for you. Thank you for your knowledge. Well, thank you very much, Robert. I appreciate that. Very kind of you. Always try to address the super chats first. Most people just throw money in here and don't have anything to address. But thank you very much for the kind comments there, and thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. All right, John says, do you know the spacing needed for an egg roll out cage so the eggs can roll out? Would a 2-inch pitch over 2 foot be okay, or a 12-to-1 pitch? Boy, that's a good 12-inch pitch over a foot, I think is what you're saying. No, that's an awful steep. Surely that's not what you mean. That'd be like that. That'd be way too steep. Yeah, I think 2-inch foot over 2 feet. Boy, I built egg rollout cages before. I honestly didn't like them that much. I just felt bad. The birds always standing at an angle on them. Everything you put in there, like feeders or whatever, always rolls. Always ends up at the front of the cage. So I didn't like them, but I want to say that I had them at about it was probably about like that, which is probably 2-inch over 12 or over 2 feet. Maybe a little more than 2 inches over 2 feet. Probably more like 1 inch over 1 foot. Yeah, I think, well, no, that'd be 2 inches over 2 foot, wouldn't it? That'd be the same thing. You're stumping me here. Yeah, it's probably a little bit around, 3 inches maybe over 2 foot, something like that. That's probably about what I had it at, and most of the eggs did roll out to the front, but so did everything else in the cage. Like I said, if you put feeders in there, they all end up at the front of the cage. Everything ended up at the front of the cage. The birds always hung on to the front of the cage because, again, it's always at an angle, so they're always standing at an angle. I just didn't like them myself, so that's the reason I don't do it. But I think you're onto something. 2 inches over 2 foot might work. I just think I had it a little bit steeper than that, probably more like 3 inches over the 2 foot span. All right, Sean says, hi, Chris. Hope all is well. I'm getting eggs to hatch. How many pins will I need total? Breeders, grow outs, more. That's totally up to you. Depends on a number of things. How many birds do you have? Do you want to keep your breeders separate from your grow outs? I tend to just throw my grow outs in with my breeders, and then sometimes they become the future breeders. So I don't keep separate cages for grow outs and for breeders necessarily. I do have an extra cage if I need it, but I don't typically separate them out and keep one cage for breeders, one cage for grow outs. I just kind of throw them all in together, and you can do that. You can do it however you want to. It's totally up to you. It's just how many birds you plan on having, how many, how big of a cage you have now. All those things kind of factor into that. How long you plan on growing them out. You can kind of figure about 1 foot or so about 1 square foot of cage space per bird. Now, when you throw your younger birds in there, they're going to be, if you're only growing them out to about 8 weeks old and then processing them, you're not going to have to worry about that too much. You can overcrowd the cage a little bit because it's only going to be overcrowded for like a week or two, a couple of weeks. They really don't start getting, they start getting real big around 5-6 weeks. So the last couple of weeks, it might be a little bit crowded, but it won't be that bad. Hopefully that kind of makes sense and answers that for you, but I can't give you an exact number. This is how many cages you need. It's just up to you. You could definitely do a separate pen, a grow out pen for your grow outs if you wanted to, and just throw them in there. But I just don't bother with it. All right, hopefully I got that one answered for you, Sean. All right, Matthew says, hello everyone, good evening. My quail are hatching, have 2 so far. The funny thing is that they are 4 days early. Well, 4 days early means your incubator may be incubating a little bit on the high side. As long as all your eggs hatch, it's not a problem, but sometimes that can cause your birds to start hatching early, and it can cause some problems with your hatch rate in the end. It can cause some of them not to hatch at all. So if you end up having a really low hatch rate, that would be something to go back and look at is, get a couple of calibrated thermometers, make sure they're calibrated and accurate, put them in your incubator. And I always say get 2, just so you're sure one of them's not wrong. And if they're both reading the same, they're probably right. And throw those in your incubator and then check to see if do this after you're hatched. Don't do it with eggs in there. And then check to see if your incubator is reading the temperature correctly. Just compare what's reading on the thermometers to what's reading on the incubator. Any 2 of the 3 read the same. That's probably the accurate temperature, and you'll figure out from there. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, where are we at here? Helen says hi from old Australia. Oh no, I think that's I read that as old QLD. Is that Queensland? Australia. Anyway, got my first egg this week. We're just about to start winter here, so I'm happy. Awesome. Congratulations on your first bird. We are just going into summer here. It's just weird to me to think that other people are going into winter. But anyway, hopefully you make it through the winter okay. I'm sure you will. And congratulations on your new birds. Never End says, might be a dumb question, but how do you tell if your quail are fully feathered out? Well, it's not a dumb question, no, but it's not really that hard to tell. You just tell by looking at them. If they have feathers instead of fuzz, they're fully feathered out. And usually that's going to be somewhere around 10 days old, something like that. They're pretty much fully feathered out at that point. They're still tiny birds, but you're going to notice their wing feathers pretty much come in first. And then usually their tail feathers, their back feathers start to come in right around in there, and then their chest will kind of feather out at the end. But it's usually pretty easy to tell. All right. Cody says my quail laid her first egg. We are proud of her, but it's been 2 days and no other eggs. Should I worry? No, it's pretty common when birds first start laying. They're going to be a little bit sporadic, especially, the biggest factor in whether birds lay consistently or not is light, the amount of light that they get. 14 hours a day is what you need in order to keep them laying consistently. So if you're not getting quite 14 hours a day of light yet, that can affect them to where they won't lay real consistently. But it's really common when a bird first start laying that they're going to lay every day or so, every couple of days. It won't take them long, though. They'll be right on track. Assuming you have enough light, they'll start laying really consistently, but pretty much every day. So no, it's nothing to worry about. It's pretty normal. All right. Michael says, I have 19 quail. Can I give them a few soot blocks? They love them, but I saw the main ingredient is beef fat. Should I stop giving them to birds? Thanks again for your helping us be more self-sufficient. Now, you can give them, you can feed them soot blocks. Now, it doesn't need to be in their main diet. It needs to be a treat, kind of a, supplement, something on the side. Don't go overboard with it, but yeah, you can offer that to them as a side, as a supplement, as a treat. They'll like it. Beef fat's fine. It's not going to hurt them. A big part of their diet naturally is insects and things like that, which is an animal protein. So, they can definitely eat soot blocks. So hopefully that helps. All right. Let's see. Tacky is it Tacky or Tacey? Casey? I don't know exactly what what your name is. Tacey, Casey, maybe? Kaylor, Taylor. There's a lot of names there. Says, hiya, chicken eggs, day 24 at last. Egg is hatching. Oh, a chicken egg on day 24. Okay. She's pipping the shell and chirping every once in a while. It's been 20 hours and not zipped much. I see a bright blood spot. Is that bad or will it dry? It should dry up. You should be okay on that. 20 hours after she's pipped the egg and she hasn't really zipped much else out of it, she or he. Yeah, that would be a little bit nerve-wracking to me, whether the chick's going to actually get out of the eggshell or not. Make sure you do your best not to open the incubator, because that can really affect a bird that's pipped the egg but hasn't hatched yet. Your humidity may be a little bit on the low side, but after 20 hours, there's a good chance that bird's not strong enough to get out of the eggshell for whatever reason. You may lose it. So just be prepared for that. If that happens, I hope it doesn't. I hope she gets out. Yeah, that is a sign that it may not be, it could be any number of things causing that. Too low a humidity, the bird itself just genetically not being very strong, low incubator temperature, which would cause the birds to hatch a little bit late and sometimes not be strong enough to completely hatch out. There's a lot of different reasons that could happen. Sorry, grab a drink there. And, it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly what that is, especially over, just video chat and a little comment, but hopefully she makes it out of the egg okay. You can try to help her out, but that's usually not very successful. So do that at your own risk. Hopefully she makes it out, and hopefully the rest of them, hopefully you have more than one egg, and the rest of them hatch out as well. All right, so Lauren says, I got a colony of Holland lops 3 days ago, but I separated them and put them in their own cage. One of them had babies, and she ate them. Did she eat them because she was stressed? Probably so. Yeah, if you just got them and there was a lot of moving around and those kinds of things in a new cage and new areas, all that, yeah, that's probably what happened. She probably got stressed out. Excuse me, Holland lops are a little bit more fragile. When I say fragile, just a little bit more sensitive. They're typically more of a pet breed. They have a different characteristic, and they do tend to be a little bit more sensitive to those types of things than your typical meat rabbits like New Zealand's and those things. But yeah, moving them around like that, putting them in brand new cages and all those kinds of things could definitely stress them out a little bit, and that could very well be why she did that. It's a survival instinct that it's pretty common in rodents and rabbits and all those small animals like that. That if they feel threatened for some reason, they'll eat their young to avoid drawing predators in. And, hopefully it's not an issue going forward. It shouldn't be. But yeah, that's probably what happened. All right. Never End says, do you put grass, leaves, sticks in your quail hutch? No, I don't. Anything I put in, you can definitely put stuff in there if you want to, but usually anything you put in the cage is going to get just covered with quail poop and becomes really messy really, really quickly. But yeah, there's no reason you can't put that stuff in there if you want to. Go ahead and do it. Just be prepared to clean up quite a bit. Watermelon says, I have 10 quail right now and they're doing just fine. They're not producing any eggs yet. Do you need to add a sandbox for them? You don't have to add a sandbox for them. It won't affect their egg production one way or the other. Kind of like I said earlier, light is really pretty much the main thing. As long as they have 14 hours a day of light, they will start laying eventually. It just takes a little bit and they'll start laying. It doesn't matter if you have a sandbox or not. Now, the benefit of a sandbox is a couple things. The quail really like it. They really do enjoy getting in there and sand bathing in their dust bath. They'll get in there and kick it around and dust themselves off with it. But they'll also tend to lay most of their eggs in the sandbox, and it makes the eggs a lot cleaner. So you don't have eggs that are usually caked with feces and those kinds of things. It's going to be a lot cleaner egg. So that's the benefit of having a sandbox. I highly suggest that you add one if you can, but you don't have to have it. They'll lay eggs without it. All right, Rebecca says, do I need to be concerned about using skid wood for a chicken coop? I've had folks tell me it could be contaminated and harmful. I'm not sure what you mean by skid. Is that like pallet wood, I'm guessing? It does depend a little bit on where the pallets, what they're made from. Usually you can tell there is a symbol on the wood itself that shows, if it was chemically treated or pressure treated or whatever. Most of the pallets and things like that nowadays, they're pressure treated and it's fine. You can use them. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just again, check the wood. There should be, maybe not on each little plank of wood, but somewhere on there should be a symbol on there that tells, if it's a chemically treated or a pressure treated or how it was, kiln dried or whatever, how the wood was treated. And that's really what you want to look at. If it's chemically treated, you probably don't want to use it, but anything else is fine. And even then, it's probably not that big of a deal for your chicken coop unless it's just saturated with some kind of chemical that's leaching off into the air. Chickens and quail won't eat the wood, so it's not a big concern. Now for rabbits, that's a different story, but you should be fine with the chickens, I would think. All right, Conturnix Breeder says, could I put hydrogen peroxide on my hatching eggs to sterilize them, or should I just put them in? Yeah, you can use hydrogen peroxide. I would dilute it a little bit with water, so probably half hydrogen peroxide, half water, and just mist them down with a good spray bottle. That's a good way. I use Listerine, half water, original gold Listerine, but hydrogen peroxide is a good substitute for that. Even rubbing alcohol can be used. Any of those things are going to be good. And it does improve your hatch rate. It does a good job of sterilizing, not necessarily sterilizing them, but keeping bacteria under control, and therefore improves your hatch rate. All right. Marie says, what would make quail get skinny over time and just die? None of them seem to be sick. Okay, so they just get skinny and die over time. That makes me think, now you're not saying that they stop eating, they're acting lethargic or any of those kinds of things. So that makes me think that it's a parasite of some kind, which could be anything from tapeworms to roundworms to coccidiosis, any of those kinds of things. But it does make me think that there may be a parasite that they're dealing with. And getting skinny and dying without any other real symptoms, that's probably going to be more in the line of like tapeworms, roundworms, that kind of stuff. You might try to use something like, without testing them to know for sure. Ivermectin can be, is it ivermectin? I always get the name wrong, but I think that's it. Is a good kind of all-around parasite control. You can kind of treat your birds with that and see if that helps with that. All right. Tacey, Casey, Kaler, Taylor. I'm just going to call you Taylor. Hopefully that's okay. Says he suggested peroxide spray before, and I didn't. And all my eggs went full development. None went bad. Oh, I mean I did it, and all the eggs went to full development. Okay, yeah. It works fine. You can definitely use hydrogen peroxide. All right. And then we're talking about the bath soak for that was the egg-bound quail we were talking about there. Thank you for that tip, by the way, Taylor. Kyle says, hey, Chris, birds are eating my tomato plants. How do you stop that? Wow, that's a tough one. Birds eating the tomato plants, I've had problems with squirrels getting on them. There's a couple things you can do. Bird netting would probably be the most humane, easy way to do that. You can just drape bird netting over them. It might get a little expensive, but you can try to add go buy some rubber snakes or those kinds of things. Drape them over your tomato cages. That does a good job of deterring the birds from eating them. They used to sell big blow-up, snakes that you could blow them up and lay them in your garden, and they look fairly realistic. Not exactly, but it did keep the birds away. Also, owl decoys, like an owl is a pretty common deterrent. You can just set it on a fence post at the edge of your garden. Hey, look, there's Lars with a 200 Danish crowns, I think they are, super chat. Thank you so much, Lars. I appreciate that. He comes in here all the time and does that. Just so very generous. So anyway, you can buy owls that are just like a plastic owl, basically, and they usually have like a bobblehead thing, so the head moves around a little bit, looks a little bit more realistic, and stick those in your gardens like a scarecrow, kind of. That does a decent job of keeping the birds away. Bird netting, or just depending on what kind of birds they are, a pellet gun, just take them out if there's not too many of them. Be warned, though, that could be illegal depending on what kind of birds they are, depending on where you live. In the United States, pretty much every bird is protected under federal guidelines, and except for like European sparrows and starlings, and I think pigeons are in those categories, that they're okay. But everything else, it's actually illegal to shoot them for just out of season, or if they're not a game bird at all, it's illegal to shoot them. So anyway, your chances of getting caught and getting persecuted for that are probably pretty slim. But again, you don't want to be just shooting some kind of endangered bird either. So my suggestion would be those other things first. Try those out and see if they work. All right, Christian wants to know if I am NPIP certified. No, I'm not. I'm not set up to be a hatchery and to ship eggs or anything like that. So I just don't bother with being MPIP certified. That is something you would need to do if you want to ship eggs, especially over state lines. But I don't do that. So it's not. I'm not MPIP certified. All right, KJ says, hey to you. Crypto Daddy says, hello boss, half my quail seem like they are laying and half aren't. I have 8 birds and only 4 to 5 eggs a day. What should I do, and how do you single out the layers and the non-layers? Boy, that's a good question. How do you know which ones are laying and which ones aren't laying, aside from, oh, I scrolled too far. Sorry, aside from really being patient and watching for a long time, I'm not sure you could tell which ones are laying and which ones aren't laying. As far as why they're not laying, chances are what's happening is they're all laying. They're just laying a little bit inconsistently, so they're not necessarily all laying an egg a day. Let's see, did you say how many you had? Half of them? Well, you said you have 8 birds. There you go. 8 birds, 4 to 5 eggs a day. That's not that uncommon, depending on where you live right now. If you're living in the United States, we're just getting into the longer days. The days are just now getting up to enough to really keep the birds laying. So if you don't have any kind of external light on them, that's pretty common. If you want to really get good egg production out of them, add a light, get the daylight up to 14 hours a day. Well, it wouldn't be daylight. It'd be daylight plus whatever your external light, adds to it to get it to a total amount of 14 hours a day of light. And that'll really get them laying good. Just be a little patient with them. They'll all start laying. They should be fine. That's usually the answer anyway. All right. Where are we at here? Caternix Breeder says, do you guys use peroxide? Do you guys? I don't know if you're asking me or other people. I don't use peroxide. I mean, I'm not against it. I just use gold Listerine. I have that, and that works for me. It lasts forever. And that's, I still have a little bit in the bottle, actually, plus some in the spray bottles. So that's what I use. It lasts forever. That's all I use it for. And it's easy enough for me to get. But yeah, you can use peroxide. All right. Neverin says, do you give treats to your quail? Occasionally, not often. I'm not against giving treats to the quail. It's just extra work, and I don't think about it that often. If I do, occasionally in the summertime especially, they tend to get black soldier fly that colonize underneath their hutches, and I get a bunch of black soldier fly larvae underneath there. So I will sometimes scrape some of those out with a little shovel and put them in their pen and let them have it. They kind of enjoy those. But other than that, I don't really give them a lot of treats. Occasionally I'll bring them some vegetables from the garden or something like that and just throw them in their cage, let them have that, a piece of cucumber or something like that. All right. Rainer says only 3 or 4 of the babies out of the 9 babies are big and the rest are kind of small. So this is back to the big litter. Yeah, that can be a little bit of a concern. As long as they're, when you say kind of small, they're not real shrivelly looking or anything like that. She's feeding them. It's probably nothing to worry about. If she does lose the litter and doesn't take care of them, knowing that she's done that before, you said she had a litter of 2 before and didn't take care of them, then that's an area of concern. I'd try to breed her again, and if it happened again, I'd get rid of her and get a new rabbit. That's a sign of really bad mothering instincts in the rabbit. And I'm sorry I don't have a better solution for that, but that's kind of the rule that I would go by. I would not keep a rabbit if she doesn't take care of her litters. First litter is understandable. And a big litter, losing a couple of babies out of that's understandable. But losing multiple litters in a row and just not doing a good job of taking care of them, it's a bad sign. And I wouldn't put up with that for very long. All right. Michael says, not sure why it happens, but one of my birds came up injured 4 days ago. She was barely walking, but today she was moving around about 50%, so I hope she pulls through. That happens from time to time. They tend to get leg injuries from just who knows what. Excuse me. Grab a drink here again. Who knows what causes the leg injuries? It just happens from time to time. And it's pretty much exactly what you described. You just go out and you see this bird that's just barely able to walk. And then a couple days later, they're walking around a little better. And then a couple days later, they're fine. That's usually what happens. Now, you can check for things like bumblefoot. It's kind of rare for quail to get bumblefoot, but it can happen. And bumblefoot is like something gets in the pad of their foot, like they scrape it or something like that, maybe on a piece of wire in the cage or whatever. They cause an open wound, and then a grain of sand or dirt or piece of food, whatever, gets in the foot and causes an infection. And what you'll notice is a big it'll be an infection. So it should be pretty obvious on the pad of the foot. It'll be kind of swollen, and bigger. What you'll need to do at that point is get out whatever's causing the infection. So, a sharp, scalpel, sterilized knife, something like that that's pretty good and sharp. You'll need to cut it open, get out whatever's causing the infection, clean the wound out, and bandage it up a little bit so it doesn't get infected again. You'll do that for a couple of days, but generally they get over that stuff on their own, so you don't have to worry about it. It's fine. All right. Shannon Lyons says, hey Chris, I ordered XL Meat Makers eggs from Hatch. Found out my incubator is on back order for 4 to 5 weeks. If my eggs beat the incubator, how long can they safely wait? Oh, that's a good question. Generally speaking, you can only store your eggs for about 7 to 10 days, something like that. And then the fertility really starts to drop. Now, you've got to assume that those eggs were probably all gathered up, put in a box, shipped to you. It took a couple of days to get to you. So by the time they get to you, they're probably already 3 days in. So you only got another 4 or 5 days, maybe 6 at the most, before you really start losing some fertility in that. Now, you might try to contact Hatch and ask them to hold your order for a little while. Chances are they can do that. They're probably pretty busy at this point of the year. They've got a lot of orders they've got to fill anyway, so it won't be a big deal for them to just throw those eggs they were getting for you into an order for somebody else and go ahead and ship them out. It's just, it's up to you how you want to do that, but that would be probably the direction I would go with that, rather than take the chance of having eggs arrive and then, not get my incubator in time and having them all, the hatch fail. All right. New Mexico Dust Bunny says, hi Chris, hope you had a great week. You were right, wild rabbits, not genetically compatible and can't produce offspring. So now I'm trying to figure out who's the father. They're beautiful. Yeah, I think I remember that discussion we talked about last week. And if you were the one that posted the rabbits, the pictures of them, I saw them. And they didn't really look like wild rabbits to me. So yeah, I'm betting that you got somebody else in there breeding your rabbits. I was kind of surprised by that. I wasn't going to argue with you about it because I wasn't 100% sure I was right on that, but I thought I was. So who knows? I can be wrong, just like anybody else. But yeah, I as far as I know, they're not genetically compatible. They won't be able to interbreed and produce young. All right, William says, good luck, Shannon. I ordered eggs on April 9th, still waiting. Yeah. This is a rough time of year. If you guys are ordering eggs, it doesn't matter what hatchery you're ordering from. You're probably going to see a delay in shipping. It's just everybody is ordering eggs and chicks and birds and all those kinds of things right now. So they do tend to be delayed. All right. Jada says, how can you prevent sore hocks? Wow, that's a tough one. Sore hocks is generally more of a genetic issue than anything else. Some rabbits are way more prone to it than other rabbits. So the things you need to do is a rabbit that is very prone to sore hocks, you need to give them, something that's very like a solid floor cage of some kind. So they're not standing on wire. Wire itself does not generally cause sore hocks, but it can irritate that and be more. Rabbits that are more prone to it can have more problems with wire than they can with solid floors. Now, rabbits that are prone to sore hocks can still get sore hocks on a solid floor. So what you'll want to do is make sure that if you have a solid floor, you've got to keep it clean. You've got to clean it like every day, every other day, because it's going to have feces and urine and all those things on there, which is going to make it even worse. It's going to cause burns on their, basically loose fur on their feet, which is going to make them even more prone to sore hocks. It's a really tricky thing to treat. If they do get sore hocks, you can treat that with something like Preparation H on the wounds that will help seal them up, close them up, so they're a little bit better with that. If it's a meat rabbit, I personally would probably look at culling that rabbit, getting a new one to replace it, because again, sore hocks is more of a genetic issue, and I definitely wouldn't keep any of the offspring from that rabbit to breed in future because it probably carries those genes with it. I know that's not the answer you were probably looking for, and I'm sorry I don't have a better suggestion for you, but that is unfortunately just the way it is. Wish I could tell you some magic trick to take care of it. Who knows though? You may, like I said, get it on a solid floor, at least a very big resting area inside its cage for it to get on, and it may clear up and you may never have issues with it again. All right. William says, I bet they would be glad to wait and hold your order 4 to 5 weeks. Yep, probably so. All right, Robert says, I need to breed 2 does with the same buck. Can I do it on the same day? Yeah, you can do it on the same day. That's fine. A buck can usually breed, 4 or 5 times in the same day. That would be fine. All right. What were we saying? I bet they will anyways. Yeah. Okay. KJ says, hey, Chris, use half-inch hardware cloth for my cage run. I found that it's very sharp. Someone recommended using Plastidip coat wire. Have you used it before? No, and I think that's a great option. It tends to be pretty expensive, and I haven't really found a good, reliable source for it. So no, I've not actually tried it before, but there's no reason not to. I don't have too many problems with half-inch wire. I use half-inch hardware cloth on my quail cages and things, and I don't have any problems with it being super sharp or any of those things. But I understand it depends on the gauge of the wire, depends on the manufacturer of the wire, those things. It can be kind of rough and kind of sharp, and over time it can definitely cause some injuries and things like that with the birds. So I don't have big problems with that, but I think coated wire is a great option if you can get it and you can afford it, because it does tend to be pretty expensive. Of course, if you do get it, you only need to use it for the floor of the cage, really. You don't have to worry about the sides and the top too much. You could, you could use cheaper wire for those, is what I'm kind of saying. All right, New Mexico Dust Bunny says they are Goudy kits. There we go. Also had another doe pop, and her last Kindle for some reason had 7 kits. That makes around 30 kits, either with moms or in the grow out of colonies. I'm ready to start processing. Boy, I bet that's a lot to keep track of there. Congratulations on all your new bunnies, though. All right, Chris says, hello from Arkansas. Awesome. That's just down the road from me. We might be neighbors. All right, it's a Chinky Baby. I don't know how to pronounce it. Says, how long can you keep fresh laid quail eggs unrefrigerated? That depends. Depends on your room temperature and all those kinds of things. Now, if you're trying to keep them unrefrigerated in like an 85-degree room, they're probably not going to keep very long, because they're going to start to develop, and then they won't be able to develop fully, so they'll probably die inside the egg, but it'll be bad. So you won't be able to keep them very long for that. Now, if you're keeping them in like a room that's like 60 degrees to 75 degrees, probably somewhere right around in there, they'll last quite a while. Also depends a little bit on your humidity level. If it's a really dry environment, they are going to lose liquid. They're going to dry up pretty quick, so they won't stay as long. If you live in a mildly humid climate, they'll last a little bit longer. If you live in an overly humid climate, they may start to mold, and so there's a lot of factors that go into that. But generally speaking, eggs will last a considerable amount of time just sitting on the counter. I'm talking a couple of weeks probably. So it's usually not a huge issue. All right. Tony says, Tony Colella with Western Piedmont Real Estate. There we go. 1.5 inch over 2 foot for the quail egg roll out works perfectly for me. Hey, thank you for that advice. So 1.5 inches over 2 feet. And that's actually pretty good. That's not that much of a slope at all. And maybe that was the reason I didn't like the quail roll out, the egg roll out cages, is because maybe I had it too steep, 1.5 inch over 2 feet. Well, that would work then. Thank you. William says, KJ, someone suggested spray on bed liner for the wire. Hey, that's a good suggestion, William. You might need to here'd be the thing I'd concern about. That's a great idea. You're talking about coating the wire with spray on bed liner to make it a little bit smoother, less rough, all those kinds of things. Now, the thing I would be worried about that is if you're using half-inch hardware cloth, by the time you spray on bed liner on it, it's probably more like quarter-inch hardware cloth at that point, because it's going to clog up the holes, so to speak, and then your droppings don't fall through. So I don't know if that would work or not, but it's worth a try, I guess. Plastadipping or something like that might be a better option. I don't know. I've never tried it, but that would be the thing. Try it out and see. Of course, spray on bed liner is kind of expensive too, but anyway, who knows? It might work. All right. Neverend says, do you clean your quail eggs before you eat them? Well, yeah, kind of. What I tend to do is take my quail eggs from the fridge. I put them in a bowl full of water. Actually, I just fill up a little bit of water in the bottom of my sink, throw them in there. And so any of them that float get thrown out. The rest of them are good to eat. If there's like obvious dirt and things on them, yeah, I scrub them off. Other than that, I just kind of swish them around in the water, and I'm going to cook them anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. All right, but yeah, I don't, like if it's obviously dirty, yes, I do clean it off and scrub it off first. I'm not going to, I don't want to, like I said, I'm going to cook it anyway, which is going to kill bacteria and those kinds of things, but I still don't want big pieces of quail manure in my, eggs. That's just not a pleasant thought. All right, William Safford says, never end only right before, otherwise you have to refrigerate them. Oh, yeah, well, good point. You're right. yeah, I don't wash them before you put them in the fridge. Again, if I have one that's really dirty, that's got like lots of caked on feces or any of those kinds of things on it, I usually just throw it out. But you can wash it off. Here's what you got to realize: if you wash an egg and like scrub it, you're washing the bloom off the egg, and it's going to go bad a lot quicker. You're opening it up to introduce bacteria and those kinds of things to it. So yeah, it's best to just wash them right before you use them, not wash them and then put them in the fridge and wait a while and then use them. All right, G. Michael says, good evening, Chris. Hope you're doing well. Is there any other livestock that you're looking forward to raise yourself? Well, we've got some meat chickens out in the shed. I've thought about getting ducks at one point. I'm putting that kind of on hold. So yeah, we got the quail, we got the rabbits, we got the meat chickens. I live in town, so I can only get away with so much. It's not, I just can't do just whatever I want. I'll draw too much attention. Let's see how we doing on time. Wow, time flies. We got about 20 minutes left. So I don't know. There may be some other livestock I add at some point. I'm not sure at this point. Probably good with what we've got, and we'll just keep it there for just a little while. KJ says, William Green, where can I buy that at? To William. What were we talking about? William Green. Oh, spray-on bed liner. Yeah, you can buy spray-on bed liner at usually any kind of auto parts store. Walmart probably has it. Amazon. Any of those places should have it. All right. Tata says, bred my first female rabbit today. I will breed my other female rabbit hopefully tomorrow. Very exciting. Very excited to have rabbits in a month. Awesome. Well, good luck with it. Hopefully it works out well. Hopefully you have some good baby rabbits in a month. William Green says, I'm an undercoating spray. Any hardware store or big box should have it. Oh, an undercoating spray. Well, that might work too. Good suggestion, William. Thank you. Crypto Daddy says, I think the chat might be delayed. Sorry for the spam. I didn't notice the spam, so it's okay. We're all good. New Mexico Dust Bunny says to Kyle, okay, I'm going to skip. We're starting to run low on time, so if you're addressing a comment to somebody else, I'm going to skip it, which is fine because you're addressing it to somebody else anyway. Sinful Aesthetics says, hey, I'm currently incubating golden pheasant eggs, and on what day should I remove them from the turner? I don't know. I'm not a pheasant. I don't incubate pheasant eggs, so I'm not an expert on those. But it looks like William Safford has an answer. It says 21 days for pheasant eggs. Off the turner, 23 to 25 for the hatch. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, William. That's one thing I really like about this community we have here is that, there's a lot of things I don't know. I don't pretend to be, know everything. I do make mistakes just like everybody else, but there's always somebody in here that's willing to help out, knows the answer to the question, and willing to offer it up. So thank you guys very much for helping each other out. And the Facebook group that we've got is very, very helpful as well. I'll admit I'm the worst at social media. I don't get on there enough. I don't, post very much. I don't even respond to a lot of, the posts on there a lot just because I'm not on there a lot. I'm pretty busy and don't have all the time in the world to do that. But there's always people, if you post a question in that group, somebody's always going to jump in and answer the question for you and give you some good advice. All right. KJ says, I have a 7x3 cage, 1/3 sandbox, and 2/3 run. How many quail can I home for that size? Regular Caturnix quail. Okay, so 7x3 would be 21 square feet. Double check my math. I'm notoriously bad at on-the-fly math, but that sounds right. 21 square feet. So you can keep probably about 20 to 25 birds in there pretty comfortably. You might even be able to push it a little higher than that, but that's probably about how many you can look at. All right. Taylor says, I've kept it at 72% humidity. Well, it sounds like your humidity's right. Says, thank you. I haven't touched the incubator. I followed your advice from beginning, so probably genetics. Thank you. Well, hopefully that's, I shouldn't say hopefully it's genetics, but I guess that's better than, the other alternatives would probably be like your incubator's not reading the right temperature or something like that, which can be a little tricky to track down. So hopefully that's it too, I guess. All right. David says, have you had quail lay 2 eggs a day? Probably. It's not really that common. I guess what they're doing usually is laying like 1 egg in the morning and 1 egg late at night. So it's, they're not on exactly a 24-hour cycle where they just lay eggs at the exact same time every day. And you're just catching them at the end of one cycle, the beginning of another cycle, something like that. But yeah, it's possible for them to lay 2 eggs in a day. I don't know because, I just collect eggs and I don't know which bird laid what eggs. But there has been a time or two where I've gone out there and thought, I have more eggs than I do hens. So one of them had to lay 2. Again, it's not very common and it won't happen on a regular basis. All right. Callie from Canada says, exciting day. Quail eggs are pipping. Awesome. Congratulations. Hopefully they all hatch. Hello to you, SMK. Uh-oh, I lost track of where I was. There we go. Got it. Got it back. All right. Michael, is there anything to do to give the quail something to do? I don't want them to be bored, but the only thing I know to do is to put all the sand in a big pile every day, and they love to flatten it out. Well, sounds like you're doing plenty for them. I think, as long as they've got food and water and a sand bath, I think they're pretty happy most of the time. You can give them some little bugs to chase or something, bring some flies around or whatever. They tend to like that. But I don't notice my birds ever really being bored, like the typical signs of boredom you see in animals where they're just pacing back and forth and, those kinds of things. That doesn't really seem to happen. They seem to be pretty content in their home. If you're really worried about it, build some kind of ground pen for them where you can put them on the ground, move them to new ground every day, let them explore through that grass and, scratch and all those kinds of things. They don't dig, so you wouldn't have to have a bottom on it necessarily. And that could be something that would enrich their lives, I guess. All right. Amy says, my quail love fresh comfrey, high protein. Yeah, comfrey is great. I wish I had some growing around here. All right, Jim Bowie says, I got a used hatching time in quotes, 5-tier breeding cage setup. I'm not familiar with them. Says, I'm going to let you guys know how it works out. Awesome. Dude, I'm not familiar with hatching time, 5-tier breeding cage, huh? Interesting. Sounds interesting, though. All right, do you use, this is from Cody's, do you use diatomaceous earth in a sandbox for the quail? No, I don't. I don't really like diatomaceous earth, and I've made this known before. You guys can disagree with me if you want. I had somebody... I did a video on this one time, why I don't use diatomaceous earth. You may not want to, something like that. And I had somebody leave some really hateful comments to me about how stupid I was and, all this kind of stuff. But again, there are some studies that show that it can cause, some respiratory problems in birds that tend to be a little bit more susceptible to that. How big of a risk it is, I don't know. What I don't like about diatomaceous earth most of all is that it is a broad spectrum killer. It'll pretty much kill any kind of bug out there. And not all bugs are bad. I don't have problems. I don't do a lot of preventative treatments on my birds, and I don't have problems with pests. I don't have problems with mites. I don't have problem with, lice or any of those kinds of things on my birds. If I did have problems, then I might turn to diatomaceous earth or, something else to treat the problem and get rid of it. Once I got rid of it, I would probably stop using it at that point. So I'm not telling you don't have to use it. I would caution you to just use it just use it all the time. I don't think it's a good, again, it's a broad spectrum killer. It kills everything. And, it kills the predator bugs that keep the other bugs in check. It kills, everything. So I don't really care for it for that reason. All right. Callie says, my quails are laying eggs like crazy. 8 eggs today from 5 hens. Can this be a problem? This is not their first day with multiple eggs. I checked and removed 2 to 3 a day. No, it's not a problem, probably. Generally speaking, it's not a problem. They tend to, when they first start laying eggs, they're a little bit sporadic at first, and then they really get going. And boy, they'll go crazy for a little while, and then it'll mellow out a little bit. So just give them a couple of days, a week or two, and you'll probably get it to level out. It's not really anything to worry about. All right, VMAX says, love your channel, man. Keep it up. Well, thank you so much. William's saying basically the same thing. It's okay. They can lay every 16 hours, so it's all good. Don't panic. I agree. All right. Do quail need direct sun? Not necessarily. All animals, to an extent, need some sunlight. It helps them with synthesizing vitamin D3 or vitamin D. Vitamin D, I think it is. Anyway. One of those two. And, so yeah, sunlight's good, but they don't need to be out in direct sun necessarily, especially not in the summertime when it gets really, really hot. I do like to keep them outside, but I keep them in a shaded area where they never really get direct sun just beating down on them and no way to get away from it. Hopefully that answered that one for you. All right, we're running low on time. How are we doing? 10 minutes left. I got a lot of comments to get through. Verna, you're late. That's okay. We don't keep track. You're fine. King of ATV Repair says, do you sell hatching eggs? I sell some occasionally locally. I'm not set up to ship eggs anywhere, and I'm not, I don't have that many birds I can produce huge amounts to ship out. So no, I'm not really set up to sell eggs generally. All right. Okay, the comments to other people. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Brian says, what age can you mix young birds with older birds? Good question. I do that typically around 3 weeks old. Usually when my birds are 2.5 to 3 weeks old, then I go ahead and just throw them in the pens with the older birds, and they do just fine. What I find problems with is whenever my birds get closer to breeding age, when they're about 5 to 6 weeks old, somewhere right around in there, then they're getting real close to breeding age, and then they can be considered kind of a threat by the other birds, and the other birds tend to kind of pick on them, usually after about 6 to 7 weeks, really, tend to pick on them and fight with them, and they can do some real damage to them. But younger than that, younger than about 4 weeks, from about 3 weeks to maybe 5 weeks old, somewhere right around in there, I usually add them right in, and they're fine, and I never have a problem with them. So hopefully that answers that one for you. All right. John says, from what age can you sex Coturnix quail, and how do you know which ones are male and which ones are female? Okay, it depends. If you've got, standard brown colors or something like that can be feather sexed, they're pretty easy. So if you've got like a jumbo Pharaoh, a jumbo meat maker, standard brown, any of those standard brown colors, the females are going to have a speckled chest. The males are going to have kind of a more solid orangish color chest. It's pretty easy to tell once you know what you're looking for. And you can usually do that when they hit about 4 weeks old, somewhere right around in there. After they've fully feathered out, had a little bit of time to grow out, just a little, you can tell. Now, if you're talking about like a Texas A&M that's an all white bird, the males and females are both all white. Some of the other, tuxedos, any of those kinds of things, you can't feather sex them. The males and the females look identical. So you have to wait until they reach maturity, 8 to 12 weeks old. The roosters start crowing, the females start laying eggs. You can kind of watch and tell that one's crowing, it's a rooster. Or you can just pick them up and you can vent sex them. Now, I do have a video on that. You can go and watch. It's called, I think it's 3 Easy Ways to Sex Quail. You can search that out, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. It's not that hard to do. It's pretty easy. But again, you got to wait till the birds are in the breeding mode where the roosters are crowing, the females are laying eggs. What you're doing is you're picking the bird up, going on the turning it over near the vent. The males will be a little bit swollen behind the vent, and if you just gently press on that, they'll produce a foam that'll come out their vent. Basically, that's a male. It's pretty easy to tell once you've seen it. You'll never have a problem with it. All right. Maurice says, do you have a link where I can get feeders for broiler birds? Oh, for a cheap price, Maurice says. Honestly, I just buy most of that stuff on Amazon. You can go to my Amazon shop. It's in the link of all my videos, not the live broadcast, but all the other videos. I've got a link to my Amazon shop in there, and I've got a couple of feeders listed there. I don't go through that many feeders, so I'm not worried about saving $1 or $2. There may be cheaper places to get them, but Amazon's such good service. I mean, they ship second day, air. Sometimes I just go down to the local feed supply store or farm store and buy them there too if I need one. Sorry, I don't have a better suggestion for you. You could probably look on places like, AliExpress, if you're familiar with that. Probably get some pretty good deals there, but the shipping time is usually going to be like a couple of weeks out or something like that. And there may be shipping costs that makes it not as good of a deal either. All right. Bohan King says, what would cause one baby not to mature? Brothers and sisters are 8 days old. This one looks 2 or 3 days old, still fuzzy, just a little bit of feathers on the wingtips. It's probably a genetic issue. I mean, there's a runt, and sometimes you just get a runt, and it's just genetically made to be a little bit smaller, a little bit slower growing for whatever reason. Who knows? It's probably nothing you did. There's nothing in, if all the others are doing fine, it's just a fluke. There's no real reason why it happened necessarily. All right. Verna says, found a fruit that the quail go crazy over. Is that Mamie sapota? I don't know what that is. Sounds interesting, though. All right, Mark says, 2 weeks in a row, I'm out of town with eggs hatching. Oh, no. Seems to be the case for me, too. Whenever I have something important that comes up, I'm always, like, either late or something keeps me from being able to attend to it. All right. All right, this is Nicholas says, hi, Chris. Thanks for helping guide us on poultry journey. You're welcome. And we had our first chicken hatch out today. Thank you for the inspiration. Awesome. Congratulations on your new chicken. SMK says, Chris, did you see Living Traditions got some more land? I did see that. Saw that video today, actually. It looks like a really nice place. They bought some additional farmland, basically. And from what I understand from their video, they're not planning on living on that land. They're just going to have it as additional land where they'll be able to raise some cattle and, some of those kinds of things. It looks like a really nice place. I'm kind of jealous. But they deserve it. They're good people. If you don't watch their videos, you should go check them out. Again, they're not very far from here. I've had some personal interaction with them. They've always been nothing but friendly, nothing but nice, just good-hearted, good people. So they deserve it. All right. Pierre says, God bless you and your family, Chris. I'm from North Korea this month, teaching them about raising quail to help self-sufficiency. They are learning your teachings. Well, thank you so much, Pierre, and God bless you too. I appreciate that. Where are we at on time here? Ooh, 3 minutes left. All right. Audie's Funny Farm. I had one of my females die suddenly the other day. The only thing I noticed was she seemed egg-bound. Does this happen often in quail? We just kind of talked about that a little bit ago. It's not a real common thing. I mean, it can happen in the quail just like it can happen in the other bird, but it's not a real common thing. It's nothing you should have to worry about on a regular basis. I'm sorry for your loss. It does happen from time to time, but again, it's nothing that you have to really be worried about. It's not a common thing. All right. ES says, good day. How do you tell the quail is safe to consume? Do you have a post-slaughter inspection routine? Do you just remove any birds that you think might be ill? And are there anything you look for in particular? Good question. It's usually nothing to be concerned about unless you have something looks obviously off, like the liver is spotted white, something like that. If in doubt, throw it out. That's my rule. So if I'm, processing a bird, I'm just like, this, just something off. Something doesn't look quite right. Just throw it out. Be safe. Don't worry about it. I don't have specific things I necessarily do. I do not eat a bird that just died for an unknown reason. I don't do that at all. My birds are they're healthy. If they're sick, if they're not, if they're lethargic, without an injury. Now, I will eat a bird if it gets injured and it's lethargic because of the injury, then I'll go ahead and process and eat that bird. But if there's no obvious reason, it just acts sick, droopy eyes, whatever, I don't eat them. That's just my kind of rule of thumb. All right. William says, what gauge wire do you use on your floors? Well, on the rabbit cages, I use the biggest gauge I can get. Usually that's about 16, 14 sometimes. Actually, I can't get 14 usually. It's usually 16 gauge. On the quail hutches, it's hardware cloth, so that's probably I don't know, 20 gauge wire maybe? 20 gauge, I think, is what it is. I'd have to look. I'm not sure on that. It's pretty thin wire, though. All right. Bubba says, will quail roost in a cage? Not likely. It does happen from time to time, but no, it's not. They're not typically roosting birds. They're ground-dwelling birds, so they don't need a roost in your hutch, and they probably won't use it if you put one. All right, where are we at on time here? Oh, 1 minute left. I got a time for one or two more comments here. Brittany, hope you're having a good night. What age should I take the nest box out of the rabbit cage? My 10 kits are about 3 weeks old, eyes open. You're probably fine to take it out now. I usually give them, it's usually around 3 to 4 weeks, somewhere right around in there. Once they start spending more time out of the nest box than they do in it. So I go out and check on them, and usually by about 10 days old, something like that, they're getting out of the nest box, but they're still spending most of their time in the nest box. They just venture out every once in a while. When I go out there and they're all out of the nest box, pretty much every time I go out there, they may jump back in when they see me coming, but they're pretty much spending all their time out of the nest box. I go ahead and move that out. And that's usually 3 to 4 weeks, probably closer to 4 weeks. All right. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of comments here that I did not get to, and I'm sorry about that. But it's time for me to end this one. I got to go have some dinner with my wife. Yesterday was our anniversary. So I had to end up getting stuck at work a little bit late. So I'm going to go spend some time with her tonight before it's time to go to bed. And then we got the weekend coming. So hopefully you guys had good plans for the weekend. Hopefully you had a good 3-day weekend last weekend. I was really busy. I only got one video out. I'm sorry. I'm going to hope to get 2 out this coming week like normal. And anyway, I got to shut up. I got to go eat some dinner. Thank you guys for joining tonight. Thanks for watching all my videos. God bless each and every one of you. And hopefully we will see you guys here next week. Take care.